Verses 1 to 7. The call to attention, v1, here, O Israel, intimates that this was a new discourse, delivered at some distance of time after the former, probably the next Sabbath day. Moses represents to the people the formidable strength of the enemies which they were now to encounter, v1. The nations they were to dispossess were mightier than themselves, not a rude and undisciplined rout, like the natives of America, that were easily made a prey of. But, should they besiege them, they would find their cities well fortified, according as the art of fortification then was. Should they engage them in the field, they would find the people great and tall, of whom common fame had reported that there was no standing before them, v2. This representation is much the same with that which the evil spies had made, number 13:28, 33, but made with a very different intention, that was designed to drive them from God and to discourage their hope in Him, this to drive them to God and to engage their hope in Him, since no power less than that which is almighty could secure and prosper them. He assures them of victory, by the presence of God with them, notwithstanding the strength of the enemy, v3. Understand therefore what thou must trust to for success, and which way thou must look. It is the Lord thy God that goes before thee, not only as thy captain, or commander-in-chief, to give direction, but as a consuming fire, to do execution among them. Observe, he shall destroy them, and then thou shalt drive them out. Thou canst not drive them out, unless he destroy them and bring them down. But he will not destroy them and bring them down, unless thou set thyself in good earnest to drive them out. We must do our endeavor in dependence upon God's grace, and we shall have that grace if we do our endeavor. He cautions them not to entertain the least thought of their own righteousness, as if that had procured them this favor at God's hand. Say not, for my righteousness, either with regard to my good character or in recompense for any good service, the Lord hath brought me in to possess this land, v4. Never think it is for thy righteousness or the uprightness of thy heart, that it is in consideration either of thy good conversation or of thy good disposition, v5. And again, v6, it is insisted on, because it is hard to bring people from a conceit of their own merit, and yet very necessary that it be done. Understand, know it, and believe it, and consider it, that the Lord thy God giveth thee not this land for thy righteousness. Hadst thou been to come to it upon that condition, thou wouldst have been forever shut out of it, for thou art a stiff-necked people. Note, our gaining possession of the heavenly Canaan, as it must be attributed to God's power and not to our own might, so it must be ascribed to God's grace and not to our own merit. In Christ we have both righteousness and strength, in Him therefore we must glory, and not in ourselves, or any sufficiency of our own. He intimates to them the true reasons why God would take this good land out of the hands of the Canaanites, and settle it upon Israel, and they are borrowed from His own honor, not from Israel's deserts. He will be honored in the destruction of idolaters, they are justly looked upon as haters of Him, and therefore He will visit their iniquity upon them. It is for the wickedness of these nations that God drives them out, v4, and again, v5. All those whom God rejects are rejected for their own wickedness, but none of those whom He accepts are accepted for their own righteousness. He will be honored in the performance of His promise to those that are in covenant with Him. God swore to the patriarchs, who loved Him and left all to follow Him, that He would give this land to their seed, and therefore He would keep that promised mercy for thousands of those that loved Him and kept His commandments. He would not suffer His promise to fail. It was for their fathers' sakes that they were beloved. Rom 11:28. Thus boasting is forever excluded. Cf 1:9, 11. That they might have no pretense to think that God brought them to Canaan for their righteousness, Moses here shows them what a miracle of mercy it was that they had not long ere this been destroyed in the wilderness. Remember, and forget not, how thou provokedst the Lord thy God, v7, so far from purchasing His favor, thou hast many a time laid thyself open to His displeasure. Their fathers' provocations are here charged upon them, for, if God had dealt with their fathers according to their deserts, this generation would never have been, much less would they have entered Canaan. We are apt to forget our provocations, especially when the smart of the rod is over, and have need to be often put in mind of them, that we may never entertain any conceit of our own righteousness. Paul argues from the guilt which all mankind is under to prove that we cannot be justified before God by our own works, Rom 3:19, 20. If our works condemn us, they will not justify us. They had been a provoking people ever since they came out of Egypt, v. 40 years long, from first to last, were God and Moses grieved with them. It is a very sad character Moses now at parting leaves of them, you have been rebellious since the day I knew you, v. 24. No sooner were they formed into a people than there was a faction formed among them, which upon all occasions made head against God and his government. Though the Mosaic history records little more than the occurrences of the first and last year of the 40, yet it seems by this general account that the rest of the years were not much better, but one continued provocation.